I'm like amazed. I'm at a shrine to everything that I loved growing up as a kid. Tell me about this place.
Well, you know, actually, they are like a shrine because the man who carved these, my dear friend Charles Phan, carved them because he worships the people who created these things.
Wow.
And this is his way of paying homage to them.
Really?
And he doesn't realize how incredibly great he is. He really thinks they're awful. They're like the best he could do in his poor, humble way to honor the people who did the original works of art. And they're simply incredible. He lives in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Yeah. He got to the age of 45 years old and then suddenly picked up a penknife and began to carve these.
So they're made out of wood then?
Everything here is made out of wood. And he loves challenging himself to make things out of wood that it's just simply impossible to make out of wood. Every whisker, every little thing that looks like a piece of string, every minute branch, everything is carved out of a block of wood. Whew. So if you see something really small and skinny like Mickey's tail,
right,
that's not a piece of bent wood.
Uh-huh.
That was a block of wood, and he cut away everything but the tail. I asked him once how he went about creating one of these sculptures. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, over here on this one, he started with a little bird, and he built it all out from there.
That's Peter and the Wolf?
Yes.
How cool. And you have the wolf, you have the house, yeah. Peter's house, you have the forest, and he even painted the mat design in the back.
Yes.
It's made to look three-dimensional,
like
but it's...
And look at the awesome ferocity of this wolf. I mean, isn't he just incredible?
And I love Sleepy Hollow, one of my favorite places.
Yes, of course.
Right? With Ichabod Crane.
Well, one of the incredible things about these is every single one of them is only 4 inches deep. Mm-hmm. But look at the depth he's managed, the illusion of the depth he's managed to put into that narrow space.
It's like folk art. I mean, he's put his own personality, his own stamp into these pieces.
The minute Charlie picks up one of these, mm-hmm. Charles picks up one of these pieces. Funny Charlie came out. That came from one place really deep because for years I didn't know his name.
Okay. And
he had signed them CP. And in my head, I thought C stood for Charlie.
Okay. And
when I finally discovered who he was, it was Charles. So I was close.
Close.
But I don't know why Charlie just crept out. It came from someplace.
You sense that. It's really cool. Each one is a scene from a cartoon or maybe a film. Mm-hmm. They're all titled Peter and the Wolf, Donald Duck and the Gilded Man, Silly Symphonies, The Skeleton Dance, and they're dated to 1929, 1934, different dates on the different scenes. So but to see these, I mean, I'd expect maybe a person to have 1 or 2 of these. How did you ever manage to get such an amazing, awesome collection?
Well, actually, once we met, he visited every year.
Okay.
And brought what he carved that year.
Wow.
So he's been visiting here for 30 years now, maybe 32 years. Mm-hmm. And for 4 years before I ever met him, I was getting his carvings through an antique dealer who wouldn't disclose his name to me.
Oh, wow.
And so you see all these names on the front.
Yes.
And the artists who created them. You'll never see Charles' name anywhere. That's how modest he is. Mm-hmm. And only there would be the initial CP on the back. And then one day, this guy this antique dealer whose prices were getting higher and higher and higher, he really had me hooked. And I didn't mind because they were worth every penny of it.
Right, right.
He handed me one that he had obviously just picked up from Charles.
Okay.
And on the way back to my vehicle, I'm walking along with this thing, and I turned it over to see what number it was, and there was Charles Phan written on the back in pencil.
So finally you knew his name.
Yeah, I was
A revelation.
I was very troubled because I thought it wouldn't be ethical for me to contact him.
Oh.
So I asked my friend Noel Barrett, who from the Antique Roadshow, you may have seen him there, the guy with the ponytail.
Yes.
And Noel knows everybody in collecting and in dealing and all that. And Noel said, "Are you crazy?" Mentioning the guy who was selling me, he says he wouldn't hesitate in a minute to do this to you. Just go call him up.
Huh.
And so I did, and the rest is history. Now we're the best of friends.
Made by a man that simply made them because he loves these characters. He loves these moments in cartoon history, and he's expressing his love in it. It's not meant to be mass produced.
You got it.
Yay!
You got the whole essence of it.
And I think it's cool that you have admitted this into your world too, because some people say, well, no, I only want the original pieces that the studio okayed. And you're saying, well, there's also this amazing interpretation through one man's heart and one man's spirit.
Oh, absolutely. And I will go so far as to say that if hard times come upon me and I ever have to sell stuff, this will be the last thing I ever will part with while I'm alive.
Good. I understand
that. This is a work of love, and Charles loves carving. He loves doing this. It's all he does. And he's whittled away everything in his life except the most intrinsic values. He said to me, I asked him once, how do you go about carving something like out of wood? Because I'd tried it with disasters, and I still have the scars of it. And when I was 11 years old. And he said, well, I just see the character in the wood, and I take away what doesn't belong there.
Right. Like a true sculptor.
Like Michelangelo had said that thousands of years ago.
Right.
And Charles had no clue. He has no concept of art history, Michelangelo, anything like that. But here he is saying the identical thing. I mean, that's incredible.
I love how some of them come out of the boxes. You have Elmer Fudd and Bugs Bunny. I think more than half of the carvings are outside of the frame. Or next to them you have the three caballeros. They're practically entirely out of the frame. They've totally come to life. They're jumping to life out of this what might be a frame of a cartoon or frame of a movie, and they've jumped out of it into life, into this space here.
Well, Charles grew up on the comic books and the funny papers, and there's a tradition for that in comic strips like Smokey Stover and Jiggs and Maggie.
Yes,
if you look very carefully in the background, people in the frames, each frame on the wall is a living world, and the people are coming out of the frames and interacting with other people in frames. So the tradition of that is continued here. This was a commission. I asked him to do this. And I was wondering, how can he do this complex thing of tiny pieces and not have it look like it's broken? Not have it look like a bunch of small things that are sort of broken up and they're like, well, there's none of that. Every piece is unconsciously placed perfectly.
Yes.
They appear to be flying in space.
Right. The type is actually moving. It's not flat letters.
Yeah, and you don't just run a piece of wood through a jigsaw, cut it out, and bend it. This had to start with a big block, and everything else was carved away to create that bending.
That is so amazing. I can see what you mean. And the figures, they're flying through space, but it's a benevolent. They're almost it's almost slow motion the way they won't break because they'll eventually land not break.
Absolutely.
They're gently being, I mean, it's a sneeze, but it's not a horrific sneeze.
Absolutely. Maybe. I sort of suggested to Charles that maybe if he wanted to do type, he could have the type suspended on rods or something so it looked like it was floating. It's floating. It's connected over here and over here, but the letters are all subtly interconnected. They're all carved out of one piece of wood. The whole thing. Another one of Charles' masterpieces. Have you ever seen the cartoon The Band Concert?
I don't think I have.
Oh, wow. Well, it was Mickey's first Technicolor cartoon, and it's considered probably second in importance to Steamboat Willie.
Wow.
And he's a conductor of an orchestra. They're playing at a county fair, and they're playing the Peasant and Poet Overture, and then the William Tell Overture, and the storm comes up, and the orchestra plays so inspiringly that it whips up an actual tornado.
Oh, wow.
And a whole orchestra is carried aloft into the hurricane.
And they keep playing.
And they keep on playing as they swirl through space. And Charles rendered this thing in wood. And I feel like he took on a whole new level here. It is like jumping from realism into cubism or something, where it becomes a total abstraction as these figures are wildly circling this great big, very heavy, solid wood tornado.
It's remarkable. I love the idea of them still playing their instruments even in the middle of a cyclone or a tornado. I mean, it's like what we were talking about earlier, being in Kairos. You're just lost in the passion of your art, that time and even your surroundings vanish. You're just focused on the creation here of music.
Absolutely.
And it's so potent that Mother Nature herself rises to the occasion.
And you're swept up.
And you're swept up in it.
Swept up in it.
Yeah.
And it's swirling around. And every piece in here, every element is carrying out that swirling. All of the debris and things flying through the air at random, they're all part of that movement. So Charles does all this intuitively. If I was to try to explain to him what I see here, he'd say, really? Really? Well, I just thought, the wind was blowing, so I would do it that way.
Sure. It's remarkable.
Anyway, I think it's a quantum leap into a whole different dimension.
He's got the tiny notes. He's got the like a little alarm bell. The pieces. It reminds me a little bit of the Wizard of Oz.
Oh yeah,
still doing whatever they're doing.
Well, actually, it was the same thing.
The cyclone's going on. You're still pedaling your bike. Someone's still playing the piano or whatever. There's I think a rolling pin. There are articles of a kitchen flying around caught up in the wind.
In typical Charles fashion, buried way in the background where you have to use a dentist's mirror to find it is Donald Duck.
Oh, great.
It's just like him. He would put things in here that are hidden to the eye. You have to examine them really carefully.
Under the Merry Christmas creation.
Well, I happen to love this one, and it's a perfect illustration of the fact that Charles got better and better as time went along.
He did.
But he never lost that incredible naivete. He never lost that fresh innocence. So it seemed logical to him that it was snowing. So how do you make it snow? Well, he made it snow all over the frame, all over everything. It's outrageous, and it works.
It sure does. I love
Incredible, isn't it?
1933, this scene.
1933, the reindeer is Horus collar, or a look-alike. He's got antlers tied on their branches of a tree.
Yeah.
Don't you love the smoke?
I do. Captured there. That's perfect.
He doesn't he doesn't care what happens to these. It's the doing of for him is everything.
When toll is taken, hell's bells ringing in my ear. It's certainly hot, the rhythm just swells. Now somebody's got a hold of those bells. They're starting to ring. They're starting.
Okay.
I would love to hear about these pieces up here. They're different. It's like they're one-offs. There's
Well, of course, they're absolutely one of a kind.
yeah.
They were carved by an extraordinary human being named Sonny Hatfield.
Hatfield.
Who was actually one of the original. He's a direct descendant of the Hatfields and the McCoys.
No kidding.
He lives in Kentucky, in the hills of Kentucky. I think it was called Glendale, Kentucky. He was mayor of the town.
Oh wow.
Extraordinary human being, and he, for the sheer joy of it, he made these toys.
Huh.
I would call them kinetic sculptures. To Sonny, they were always toys.
Because they move, right?
Because they move, they animate. The mechanisms are amazing. I've seen what's inside some of those boxes. They would put Rube Goldberg to shame.
Wow.
The mechanisms are purely intuitive.
Wow.
Off the top of his head, what's going on there is totally crazy.
Who did he make these for? Were they made for his kids or
They were made for himself.
Wow.
To amuse himself and to be shared with toy collectors. And he was very generous in sharing them, and he sold a lot of them to collectors.
Really?
And well, I first met him at the Allentown Toy Show, and I was in there pretending to be a dealer, setting up to get in there early.
Okay.
And all I wanted to do was badly run around and see what I could find.
Sure.
And friend after friend was coming to me and saying, Mel, you have to go out to the parking lot. Oh, God, I don't want to miss anything. Trust us, go to the parking lot. So in the prime moment of the toy show, out I go, and there's Sonny at a card table by his vehicle, and he's showing off his toys. He wasn't selling anything. He wasn't trying to sell. He was like an innocent child. There was not a scrap of guile in him. He was there to share what he had done, and he was so proud of it, so into it. If you would see him operating one of these toys, they all operated from one simple cranking motion. But you know, there's a lot of ways to turn a crank. And Sonny could master everyone. Everyone required a different touch. And he would get the horses galloping, he would get the boxers fighting, and he would tell you what everyone was thinking.
Exactly.
He would say, there's that little Pluto. Well, he pronounced it Pluto. There's that little Pluto. He's riding there in the back of that cart, and he's just having such a great time, and he's looking around. And, oh, there, he sees a cat over there. Pluto, he's looking at that. Wait, well, what's that over there? Sonny would tell you everything. He says, that horse is getting going now. Now this is right. I got it right. The horse is going just right, and he'd get that going and going and going. And he was having such an incredible time. He was such a wonderful, wonderful, beautiful person. One of these characters, he had brought them to life, and he knew exactly what was going on in their minds.
How amazing. I don't know how you explain that kind of nature. I mean, it's rare to find that in people. They're not painted, except for Mickey. His trousers seem to be painted or colored.
They're all intuitive.
Uh-huh.
These things talk to him, and
Yes,
when they said,
do.
color me, he did.
Got it.
And the wood that he uses in them, it all came from one large old table. That's all of this wood, not this. He made that mistake. What's inside? He instilled them with life in the most, not even just in their looks, but in their actions too.
Well, he's like a wizard. He conjured life
Absolutely,
into these
absolutely.
animated. It's like that
That's it.
with Mickey, and he makes the broomstick come to life. He pretends to be the wizard.
It's a very good analogy. That's
Yeah.
exactly what he was doing. He was bringing to life. Fortunately, he didn't flood the house.
Yeah, exactly. We don't want that.
No.
Well, I can't wait to see these moving. I mean, they look like they themselves can't wait to move. They want to demonstrate their movement.
This is a very, very gentle one, but see, she does a little dance, even though it's one rod. She does a little hop, and then she swings around.
That's great.
You can control the way she dances by the
You can control, I can make her go all the way around if I crank this way. Okay, here we go. I love Pluto. You know those kind of dogs, when you're taking them for a ride, they gotta see everything. So check him out. He's looking around. He's not gonna miss anything. Okay. You get this horse going just right. Sonny knew how to do it. Let me see if I can get it. This is actually a Disney character, the Cannibal Chief. Crater Mickey. And Sonny showed me one of these he made, and I said, Sonny, will you make me one? Sure, of course, Mel. So he made it, but he put that guy in his head, and that's it. This is Sonny's masterpiece. And all the lead characters are there. There's Goofy playing the drum, Mickey playing the piano, Minnie's dancing on the piano itself is dancing, Horse Collar's playing the cymbals, little Pluto's tail is beating on the drum, and the most incredible piece here is Clarabelle Cow singing. And if you'll notice, everybody is going to the beat. Clarabelle, through some sheer magic that Sonny himself couldn't even figure out, holds the note. They really beat the hell out of each other. I mean, this is brutal. Look at Olive Oil back there. She's going crazy. You can just hear her saying, "Oh, there's Wimpy eating a hamburger out about. So they really go nuts. Now these pieces are just held together by gravity.
These are great. So this is the happy bovine family.
Yes, this is your everyday bovine family, bovine beauties here. And the most beautiful bovine of all is Elsie, of course.
Yes, Miss Elsie.
Elsie, the Borden cow.
She sold a lot of milk in her day, right? And cheese and cream and butter.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, look how her eyes move. Oh, that's so cool. Her eyes actually move. I can see them.
Her mouth is supposed to move too,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to be able to find them.
There she goes.
Wow.
Her mouth is moving too.
Wow, okay. That's your mouth, Sally. She's all made of wood except for the heads, which are plastic wood, and they were sculpted by Bill Baird himself.
Bill Baird himself.
But the tolerances of the carving is so amazing. Watch what she does.
Oh, that's so great. That's so great.
Well,
Oh, she wipes her mouth.
oh, this is little Beauregard.
Little Beauregard. Oh, he's winking at you. That's great. Oh, sweet.
Oh,
That's sweet. And this is Pops.
this is Elmer.
Elmer.
Elmer was usually bad-tempered.
Oh.
Look at the way these legs are created, the carving and the articulation.
I can see that. They're beautifully carved.
Velvet.
The musculature, yeah, his body in kind of a velvet or mohair. And again, the yarn for the hair and the rings and everything.
Well, these were created for a commercial for Borden's. And if you follow the strings, they go way, way, way up because they had to be operated out of camera range.
Okay.
Unlike Bubbles down below where she would be held like this right on the floor of a stage. These are on a ladder, and they're up on a traveling balcony of sorts to operate them. The thing that is so fascinating about the Baird marionettes, you know, when I was a kid and I saw these things for the first time, I was so enraptured by them. I thought I was hallucinating because in my mad imagination, I thought they were changing, that they were so incredible, they were changing their facial expressions.
Wow.
I thought, how can a puppet do that? I mean, they're so alive. Suddenly they're smiling, then they're frowning, and how does this happen? Well, this is how it happens. They just change the heads.
Wow.
So they had a different head for every situation. These are all animated. All the eyes operate on these. All the mouths operate on most of them. And these were for close-ups and expression reaction shots in the TV commercial.
What year would they be seen?
1950s.
1950s. Okay. So there was black and white then.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Early 50s.
Now, would her coloration reflect the fact that it was shot in black and white, that maybe the colors are not...
No, I don't think so as far as I can tell.
Okay.
I think they were just naturalistic colors. And you see her outfits are different colors. Well, it was a whole series of commercials. And so they were different series, different setups. As permanent as these things are, as much as they're carved out of wood and in a way will last forever, the pupils of the eyes are actually black tape.
Oh,
So they could be removed and positioned differently for wherever they want to happen in the
that's
film.
so smart.
And I see one of his eyelashes here is dropping off. So I guess they were removable too, like false eyelashes.
Right, falsies. Elsie wore falsies.
This would be for a close-up, and somebody would operate her arms from underneath. And her head doesn't move at all, but her eyelashes and her eyes move.
Wow. Tell me a little bit about Miss Bubbles, shall we say, her legitimate stage name. So she appeared in nightclubs in New York City?
Oh yeah, New York City and all over the world.
Wow.
And including India, as a matter
kidding.
of fact. Yeah. And I'll explain in a minute why she wasn't a hit in India. At any rate, every string on her persona does something provocative.
Oh, I love her eyelashes and her blue eyeshadow. She's sweet. There's something very
Provocative or erotic. Check this motion out. Is that amazing?
Oh boy, oh boy.
And then she could get her hips going if I can find the string. Well, let me get down, start at the bottom and work my way up.
Okay.
And then she could also, and then here is her bump and grind string.
Oh boy. Be still my heart.
Now then, you mentioned India. After she had removed every article of her clothing, they were strung through these little hooks in her hand, and she would take them off and drop them. She then finished her act by taking off her head.
Yikes.
And there was a way of unclipping her neck, which I'm not going to do because once I do it, I can't get it back again. But once her neck is unclipped, her hands would go up and lift her head up high above her body.
Wow.
When he performed in India with her, the audience didn't get it. They thought she was just broken.
Oh.
I guess ladies didn't do a lot of stripteases in India.
Or take their heads off very often.
Because I used to make puppets.
Okay.
And what you would usually see is a piece of cloth that clipped around here that went up to hook eye here. And you'd see something similar like that. And basically, most marionettes are meant to be fully clothed. This is so incredibly carved with such wonderful tolerance that it gets full action and you're not even aware that the joints are there. Probably the best manifestation of Buck Rogers ever to be created. And it was all free.
Wow.
If you liked Buck Rogers and you wanted to possess this, you got it for nothing. You got it for free. All you had to do was testify that you drank this product. I don't know what it was. It must be plastered here somewhere. Cocoa malt or something.
Wow.
That you drank this stuff every day, every day for a month, and then you had to get your parents to sign an affidavit that you honestly you weren't lying, you were telling the truth, and then if you send in these official documents, you got this glorious Technicolor, amazing object before your eyes, and then you had to cut it out. And I say a prayer of thanks because the child who cut this out with a pair of scissors did a better job than I could do with an X-Acto knife. I love this kind of timeless feeling that this is something that is, well, the past is brought into the future.
It's there. I mean, it's a little bit of the 30s and these goddesses with the feather, top notches. It's very Roman or Grecian. It's a little bit of Atlantis.
It's very
into
Atlantis.
verse. From the 30s. I mean, what were people thinking? It's fun. It's a fantasy I'm attracted to.
This is a very, very rare item.
Okay.
And it does come with a booklet that is cut out, and one can cut it out, and it has appeared in several recent auctions, uncut, the complete booklet. And it's advertised and bid on as complete. But it isn't complete. It's this cardboard theater that had to come with it.
Okay.
And nobody's got it. And through some twist of fate, I got it. The guy that offered me this had the whole damn thing with the theater. So the booklet, which is sold as complete and cherished worldwide by 3 lucky collectors, is only the film. The theater's the projector.
Huh.
And so this thing in this showcase is it. That's as good as Buck Rogers gets, in my opinion.
Sudden, I'm back in the 1800s, I think, right?
Yes, you
wonderful,
are. You are absolutely right.
And maybe another country. Am I in England when I look at this?
Well, now that's very interesting. You are right across the river in Goshen, New York.
Okay.
And the year is 1876.
Wow.
And you're 17 years old, and you're going to a county fair, and your name is Gus White, and you see a Punch and Judy show, and you say, I can do better than that. And then you go home and you carve these puppets, and you build this stage, and you perform in the local town meeting, and you're sort of a hit, and you spend the rest of your life traveling all over the United States with this troupe of puppets. And you're 5'3", a tiny person who reaches up over your head like that with puppets that weigh 10 to 15 pounds apiece, and you do it for hours. That was Gus White who created this amazing thing. And you look at this and you say, folk art? No, it's not folk art. He was an accomplished artist. At 16, he was a painter. He painted, there in Goshen, there was a racetrack. He painted portraits of the horses.
Wow.
It was the only thing that kept him from being just one of the great artists of huge fame was the fact that he was living then in the turn of the century when there wasn't the kind of mass communication. If he lived now, he would go viral.
Okay.
And be known all over. He would be Walt Disney. He would be Jim Henson.
Wow. It's amazing. Tell me about them. I don't know that much about Punch and Judy.
You don't know much about Punch
I know
and Judy?
it has an English, or even goes back to the Renaissance, even perhaps.
Well, it goes back a hell of a long way, and I guess
Okay.
it would start in Italy with Puccinella, and then it went across the land to France, where Punch was Polichinelle.
Ah.
And Polichinelle out there in the showcase, I have a beautiful one.
Okay.
And across the river to Punch and Judy, and Punch and Judy was chronicled by George Cruikshank, the famous illustrator, in the 1800s, and he wrote the plays down verbatim and illustrated them, and that's the Punch we still know today. And it's an amazing story. It's an incredible story. It was so immensely popular. At every seaside, there'd be a Punch man with a little booth doing Punch and Judy. And the story is, Punch is a total scoundrel.
Oh.
He's an evil person. And the whole plot is him encountering one individual after another, beginning with his progeny, his baby, who he murders.
Oh, no.
And then out comes Judy, his wife, who he does in with that punch stick while they battle back and forth until he kills her. And then one after another, he meets a different personage who he murders in one more creative way than the last. And if you look at those two cases over there, you would find this arsenal of weaponry, from straight razors that are this big to gallows to you.
Very violent.
It's totally violent. And in the end, he
R-rated.
confronts the devil himself and puts him in the sausage grinder.
Man, so he
And out the sausage grinder, he grinds one link of sausage after another, and the thing that made Gus White's version of Punch and Judy unique was it was truly an American phenomenon.
Right.
And in England, there was a cast of characters: the clown, the bishop,
A set cast.
A traditional cast of characters. Gus White retained some of them. He knew nothing about Punch and Judy beyond what he saw at that county fair.
All right.
And he turned all these characters into American ethnic stereotypes, I might say. But they weren't stereotypes then. In other words, if you look at the set of puppets, the Irish washerwoman, the Jew, the Chinaman. Gus was creating these stereotypes. They weren't like that in print. He was creating them right there himself in the 1870s. And so when the Chinaman goes down the sausage grinder, the sausages come out politically incorrect, sort of with a yellow tinge. And on the last link is a pigtail. Oh, and as a trade, he was a sign painter.
Okay.
And so if you just look at the sausage machine, the typography on it is exquisite.
Yes, it is. Fresh sausage. So he painted everything here.
He painted it, he created it, he carved it, he brought it to life, he animated it, he scripted it, he did it at the county fairs. And the first show he had, he put a little jar up for donations, and nobody donated anything. We're at the really beginning of showbiz here. And he got the idea to put up a sign that said 10 cents admission.
Okay.
And so they paid beforehand just to get in and see it.
Smart.
And so he learned now he didn't have to pass the jar. Now he was making as much as $80 a week.
Wow, which is big money then.
Or a day, maybe.
Are they some of the oldest items that you have in your collection here?
Yes. Comic characters don't go back any farther than that. This is the very beginning of them.
Really? Is that right?
Well, as we know them today, they started here. They started with the Punch and Judy. They started in some of the stylized characters that Frank Baum created in the Wizard of Oz series.
What about Thomas Nast, though? Didn't he do...
Well, Thomas Nast, as a cartoonist, did some very, very definitive imagery. He gave the image to Santa Claus, and he created the Uncle Sam as we know him today.
Right, right.
And Bulls and Bears, they all come in a way from Thomas Nast. It was, so he was part of this history of the comic art. Here we have Happy Hooligan, which was
incredible.
He makes the link between Punch and Judy and the comics. And Gus added the show in 1905 when the comic strip just came out.
Okay.
And he was ultimately the last puppet he added to the cast of characters.
Wow. And Gus had been already doing this for 30 years
He'd
or
been
so?
doing it already for 30 years,
That's
yeah.
amazing.
And so here you have Happy Hooligan, comic character. He bridges the gap.
And so
Incredible object.
He's got a tin or some kind of a metal
Tin
hat.
can for a hat.
And he's incredibly hand-carved. That's all carved by Gus himself. And then is there a gesso or a kind of a plaster or
You know,
composite?
I actually don't know how the process of painting them. They look like oil paint to me. And Gus White was a really decent artist. I mean, a great artist.
Yes.
Well, he painted the background. That's his own self-portrait. He was an incredible artist. He was also a sign painter by trade. Spent the rest of his life after the puppetry was over painting signs. And you see his sign painting artistry in this, which is the ticket booth.
Amazing. Now, this opened up somehow? Or?
Well, this would open up to vend the tickets from behind.
Okay.
It also is a case for carrying the puppets.
Well, that makes sense. Like a trunk.
Yeah, so it served a double purpose because this was a traveling show.
Tell me who this character is.
This would be the Dutchman. These characters, in his version of Punch and Judy, the traditional English characters became American ethnic stereotypes.
Okay.
And so this would be like the kind of Dutchman who came over here and built the stone walls outside our house here in the Hudson Valley.
New Amsterdam,
Absolutely.
early New York. Absolutely. So he has his Dutch hat and his blonde hair and then who's this gentleman over
Well,
here?
that would be one of the several black men in the show. There were a lot of any ethnic stereotype.
Right.
Irish policeman, an Irish washerwoman.
Coppers, yes.
And
Sure. All the ethnic stereotypes of that
Absolutely.
century. Absolutely. Wow. And he did this for 40 years, would you say?
I believe so, yeah.
Now, did he keep a journal or
There are some articles around it that he contributed to the stories that they tell. Eventually, I'll do a proper website, and his story will really be told
That would
as
be
it
great.
should be there.
Because there are stories handed down to his children, perhaps, or
He
grandchildren?
never married, and he never had any children, but he had a great nephew who got the puppet theater, ultimately, Harold White, who loved the thing and played with it as a kid, and has kept it intact. A year or two after he passed away, the puppet show went to his nephew, young Harold White, who was like 9 years old at the time. And Harold tells a story, and I actually have a videotape of him telling it.
Oh, wow.
And apparently, when he was about 10, Walt Disney himself came to Goshen, New York. I guess that he used to do summers in the Adirondacks or something like that. He saw the puppet theater, and he said, "These are the best Punch and Judy I've ever seen," and he wanted to buy them. And Harold would not sell them.
It's amazing.
So in a funny kind of way, this is sort of like, well, part of all this world, you know, it's all floating out there. The origin of comic characters here in Punch and Judy, them coming through Happy Hooligan to join them, firmly clasp hands with comic characters, and then Disney coming and wanting to possess them.
Sure.
And then they're ended up here.
It's good to know that Disney had an interest in them, because it's kind of a, I don't know what the right, a ratification of the incredible value of these pieces.
Yeah.
Not exclusively in the sense of their rarity, but that they have mana, like the Hawaiians call it, inner energy. They have this kind of magical, you know, potential energy.
Absolutely.
And Disney himself recognized it and wanted to gobble them up, maybe, or incorporate them into his own magic. They're amazing. I would have loved to have seen them in action. Did he do all the voices, or did he have other?
Oh yes, he did all those. He did it all. He
Really?
was one man show. He was really on the cutting edge of Punch puppetry.
Yes.
Because he was a small man. He was like 5 foot tall. He stood behind the stage with his hands up in the air with puppets that weighed 10 or 15 pounds. Try holding your hand up in the air for 10 minutes, let alone for an hour, and then put a 15-pound puppet in it. So he was quite incredible, and he created a network of mechanical props so he could park them on his shoulders and have 4 puppets on the stage at the same time.
That's amazing.
He also was an incredible, well, you can see he's a good draftsman. He was a lightning sketch artist.
Wow.
And he could whip out these sketches faster than the speed of light. And he would not only draw famous personalities, well, I mean, Punch would draw them.
Yes.
There was a thing that held a crayon. Punch would be up there with a little easel.
Sure.
And he would be drawing first some famous personalities, Teddy Roosevelt, whatever. There's a beautiful drawing of Teddy Roosevelt and a photograph of Gus and his troupe.
Oh, wow.
And then he would draw people in the audience. And he was actually peeking through a hole in the curtain and making these portraits up there where he couldn't even see them.
Wow.
It's quite incredible. And he was a good artist.
He sure was. Did he have art school training, or was he just self-taught?
Oh, no. He was only 17 years old when he did the puppet theater. But when he was 16, he was already selling portraits of all the horses there in Goshen. It was by the racetrack. And he was commissioned to paint horse races.
What an amazing man.
What a talent.
Bells ringing from the rafters, bells beckon to hereafter.